Hello and welcome to this interview. My name is Andres Gomez Samuelson, and I am one of the co-founders and officers of the Stanford Transhumanist Association. Today I've got the huge honor to meet David Pearce here in San Francisco. David is no doubt one of the most well-known transhumanist philosophers. Among his many activities, he is known for starting the World Transhumanist Association with Nick Bostrom and for writing the Internet Manifesto, The Hedonistic Imperative, as well as The Good Drug Guide, and more recently, The Biointelligence Explosion, how recursively self-improving organic robots will bootstrap their way into super-sentient, full-spectrum superintelligence. Concretely, Dave is also the founder and leading figure of the cultural movement and transhumanist subculture called abolitionism, which focuses on promoting the eradication of suffering as a feasible and imperative project. In addition, David is also one of the few contemporary philosophers who takes seriously the implications of altered states of consciousness, something that has made him known as one of the members of the new wave of psychedelic visionaries. So today I will take my chances and probe David's mind with burning questions addressing why transhumanism is important. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Andres.
So should we start with the questions?
Okay.
So first of all, sort of like some basic things. I suppose like the most burning question is, why does suffering matter? And why should we abolish it altogether, say, rather than have a middle way approach?
So the question, why does suffering matter, could only really be asked by someone who wasn't actually undergoing suffering themselves. And if right now you were racked by despair or excruciating pain, the fact that suffering matters and matters intensely would be self-intimating. So it's only the luxury of, let's say, listening to this interview in a relaxed circumstances that even allows you to ask this question. How to actually phase out suffering? It's an immense challenge. There's nothing conceptually new about it. One can look back to, let's say, Buddhism, which is predicated around overcoming suffering and doing so via the Noble Eightfold Path. It's implicit in classical utilitarianism. What's different now is really that for the first time technology allows us to seriously think about doing so. And by abolishing suffering, I mean just in humans, ultimately throughout the living world. How to do it? Okay, for a start, just a very crude existence proof. If one implants microelectrodes in the reward centres of a human or non-human animal, the human or non-human animal will continue to self-stimulate indefinitely. This is not, I hasten to add, the way I see as the way forward for intelligent life in the universe, but it's interesting that there's no physiological tolerance that is shown there. And there's no reason to think it would have been any harder for natural selection to engineer life based on, let's say, gradients of intelligent bliss rather than life based on gradients of discontent. It just simply happens to have been the case that in the ancestral environment of adaptiveness, it was fitness enhancing for organic robots such as us to be discontented a lot of the time. So, okay, what are we going to do about it if we're not going to have something like crude wireheading? One option is some form of psychopharmacology, drugs. Today's recreational drugs, probably not the way forward. For a start, what they tend to do is they simply kick into gear the negative feedback mechanisms of the brain, such that a user of a euphoriant drug will first be, crudely speaking, high, or less crudely, to enjoy states of immense well-being, unfortunately then followed by a low or a crash. And today's so-called clinical drugs, unfortunately, are very mediocre too, and they don't really seem to yield sustained well-being. but I think the long-term way forward lies in a sense, re-engineering ourselves to editing our unpleasant genetic source code. Two particular elements here. One is, before having children, I think all prospective parents have an obligation to actually choose the genetic makeup of their future offspring to ensure that they're not bringing more wanton suffering into the world. Now, this sounds very futuristic, but I'm just going to give just a couple of examples about what we could do right now. It'd be possible for all prospective parents to use pre-implantation genetic diagnosis to choose, let's say, benign alleles of the SCN9A gene. The SCN9A gene modulates the level of physical pain sensitivity of your future child. And nonsense mutations will elicit complete insensitivity to pain, which for now at least will be probably unwise. Other allelic variations confer unusually high or unusually low pain sensitivity, and it makes sense to choose benign, low pain versions of the SCN9A gene for your future child. Okay, that's, crudely speaking, physical pain. What about psychological pain? Well, each of us has what one might call a hedonic set point around which we tend to fluctuate in the course of a lifetime. A number of studies suggest that 6 months after either winning the lottery, becoming quadriplegic in an accident, one will have reverted to one's previous level of well-being or ill-being before the accident or the happy win. And one thing that prospective parents can do is choose benign alleles for their future offspring that ensure that their future offspring has a relatively high hedonic set point. i.e. we're not talking about uniform bliss here, but simply the hedonic treadmill being calibrated so that you have a naturally happy child. And this is a concrete instance. The COMT gene, or catechol-O-methyltransferase gene, has two alleles. One, crudely speaking, is associated with a high hedonic set point, a capacity to have many rewarding experiences. The other, nastier allele, is associated with an impoverished predisposition to to less in the way of rewarding, to fewer in the way of rewarding experiences, and that I would say any prospective parent has an obligation to ensure that their future child has both low pain alleles and a predisposition to being happy. Now, how far we actually go in the direction of creating super happy children, that's open to debate. But by reducing both predisposition to physical and emotional pain, we are diminishing the burden of suffering in the world. That's our prospective children. Now, clearly we want interventions that can enrich the well-being of people alive today. I think we also have an obligation to alleviate and then eventually abolish suffering in the rest of the living world too.